got a dog hanging out in the bathroom. Sing it, George. I'm a dog hanging out in the bathroom. Are you gonna help or just stand there?
The bathroom build is underway, but before the pretty tile has to come what's beneath the tile. And in this case, it's gonna warm our toes in winter. Like usual, this project wasn't without its challenges. Oh, 2020 hindsight. Just like the old saying goes, fourth time is the charm. But that's why we have Georgie to lighten the mood.
He's ready for heated floors. All right, you ready?
You just want a belly rub. Today we're taking the first step towards all of the tile in this bathroom. I'm not gonna lie, I've been a little intimidated by this project. I am not a tile guy whatsoever. Just something about how permanent it is and how hard it is to tear out, how expensive the materials are, and how you're working on a timer against mortar drying, just all sort of combines to make me a little bit queasy when I think about tile. So this is definitely something I've been putting off a little bit, but it's time to finally get this bathroom in order. But before we can start our tile, the first step is all of our underlayment, and we're doing something a little bit special. We're doing heated floor throughout the whole bathroom, including in the shower. We're using LATICRETE's Strata Heat system. This is both an uncoupling membrane and a way to hold the heat wires that will run all throughout the room. If all goes according to plan, by the end of this video, we should have a heated floor and a heated floor in the shower. The main reason we wanted to put heat wires in the shower was not so it's more comfortable in the shower to stand there. Once you got hot water running on the floor for a little while, the tile is basically heated anyway. It was mostly for the drying potential, trying to keep the grout from developing mold or mildew that eventually discolors it over time. So this is a little bit experimental in a way. I know there's other systems out there that use air to dry, but we figured since we're already putting the floor down in the main room, might as well just extend it into the shower too. We made some special accommodations to make this happen. If you didn't catch this in our waterproofing video where we put this whole shower system in, I routed this groove up through the foam curb and waterproofed that so that we have a way to get the wire from the main floor up and into the shower. We will be using a different wire for the shower in case something ever goes wrong. We can just ditch the shower system and we'll still have the heated floors. So we'll run two separate heat wires. Another thing we had to plan for ahead of time was where we're gonna mount the thermostat. So we have a dedicated 120 volt circuit coming up to this box, and there's a conduit actually that runs all the way down to the floor. This little cutout is not for a mouse hole, but rather where the conduit exits and all of our heat and sensor wires are gonna come into the floor. So I've spent a pretty good amount of time reading the instructions on this. There's a lot of technical information that LATICRETE supplies. It can be a little bit overwhelming to kind of wrap your head around everything all at once, but we're just gonna take it one step at a time, and I think at the end of the day, we should have all of this mat down. Now, step 0 in this whole project was figuring out our layering in the shower, because that was one of my big question marks. Do I put the liner down before or after the heat mat? And it turns out LATICRETE's system is actually the opposite of Schluter when it comes to heat in the shower area. So I'm glad I clarified this. The answer I was given from the tech rep at LATICRETE was their liners are quite a bit heavier duty than Schluter's. So if you put the liner on top of the heat mat, it significantly reduces the heat flow through that liner. And the Strata Heat mat from LATICRETE is actually not waterproof. There's vents in the back of it if you look closely. So you definitely want your waterproofing layer as the lowest, then the heat mat on top of that, and then the tile. So that is what we're gonna do. I'm gonna start here in the shower, and I already went ahead and vacuumed all this out, so we got all of our little bits of mortar all out of here. I'm gonna remove our drain insert assembly, and I should be able to cover this whole area with just 2 pieces. The other kind of question mark I had too was what to do around the drain here, because there's actually a pretty good dip here, and that is to accommodate the drain flange. So typically with no heated floor mat, you'd be embedding this flange in when you go to set your tile, and then you tile right on top of this. This is a tile over drain grate. So tile will be applied to this piece of metal here, and it should all come out flush at the end. Where I'm gonna have to do some figuring out is whether I want to keep the piece of mat continuous around this hole and just sort of press it down into this depression with a weight or something while it cures, or do I do this in 2 separate pieces where I have an inner ring that sits down in the bottom of the depression, leave the rest of the mat all the way up here, and then just sort of fill in the edge with some mortar. I'm not exactly sure on that yet, so we're gonna have to do some experimentation. I'm gonna start off doing the whole width of the shower, which I just measured was 70.5 inches, taking off a 1/2 inch, so we have a 1/4 inch gap on either side. You're supposed to keep this mat a 1/4 inch back from any fixed wall surface or anything to allow for some expansion and contraction. So we're gonna go to 70 inches on this, and we're gonna see how this fits in that drain depression. I feel like one of the best investments for doing any type of tile or flooring job for that matter is a really good set of knee pads. These guys, they're called Pro Knees. I think it's a small business and they are not cheap at all, but these have definitely been the best set of knee pads that I've ever experienced. They're kind of like an exoskeleton that goes all the way down to your ankle, and it just spreads the load over your entire shin rather than your knee. And it actually makes you feel like you could be on these knee pads all day, just like you were standing all day. So if you're doing any amount of tile or flooring at all, I would totally recommend getting a good set of knee pads to save your body. No amount of construction is worth ruining your body for. All right, so good news. I think this mat is gonna be flexible enough that I don't need to do this in two separate pieces. I can just sort of push this down and it's not wrinkling my edges up significantly. That's what I was worried about. The extra material that I need to go down in this hole was gonna leave me with a non-straight edge at the sides, but I think it's actually gonna work just fine. There's plenty of flex in this, so I'm just gonna have to do a weight or something to keep that down, that depression while it cures, but that's no problem at all. So I marked out the circle where I need to cut this out. It's also really nice. This is like translucent so you can see through it, which not only helps for things like cutting the circle out, but once we start putting this down, you actually be able to see the mortar smushing on the back side of this, so you know that you're getting full coverage. With the Schluter system that I've done once before, you had to pull this up like with every mat to make sure that you're getting proper coverage on the underside because it's orange and you can't see through it. That's definitely a huge benefit of the Strata mat, is that it's translucent. Got that guy cut out, and I went to go cut this little strip that I need to fill in for the rest. And I was trying to be efficient with material, so I went this way with the roll rather than this way like I did with this piece. And I just learned, this is a little tip if you're using this, that it's actually not symmetrical with the cups both directions. So it looks like it's perfectly aligned here, but then as you go down, then the cups are like halfway off. So just keep in mind when you're cutting this stuff out, make sure the roll stays the same orientation whenever you're gonna try to line the cups up. And that's important because obviously the wire has to get up through here. And I don't want it to be making any sharp jogs as it transitions between mats. There's no real reason to do that if you don't have to. So I will just go ahead and unroll a whole another 70-inch piece and then cut this strip off of it. I should be able to use it in the main floor, so it shouldn't be a big deal. Beautiful. That lines up perfect. Well, before I mix up any mortar and start that timer on myself, I'm gonna go ahead and dry cut all the rest of this for the bathroom. It's really easy. I can just do it with a scissors and tape measure, have those all staged and ready to go before I mix my mortar up. Okay, the floor is now white. This is all the waste I have, which is pretty solid. I feel it's only a couple square foot across the whole bathroom. It's 84 square foot bathroom. Only problem is it's not yet glued down, which is the hard part. So I'm gonna break out our V-notch trowel. It's 1/4 by 3/16 is the spec on that. Get out our drill mixer and start mixing up some 254 Platinum thin set to glue all of this mat down. All right, we're ready for action here. Got my drill mixer and a bucket of water. This is an empty bucket that I'll mix in, and my 254 Platinum, which is a polymer modified thin set from LATICRETE. Pretty good all-purpose thin set, and will also be good for laying this matting down. And a couple measuring cups, one for dry, one for wet. That way I can easily combine materials. The water is supposed to go in the bucket first, so you don't end up with clumps of thin set down mashed in the bottom of your bucket. And when you're mixing up less than a full bag at a time, like I am here with this leftover bag from the waterproofing project, it is a 3.6 part powder to 1 part water ratio. So I'm gonna start with just what's left in this bag. It's about 1/4 of a bag, I would say. Measure this out in arbitrary cups of whatever this is, and then I'll be able to divide that by 3.6, figure out how much water is gonna go in the mix, and then go ahead and mix it up. That should get me at least started with this first set of mats. Can't forget PPE with this stuff, because not only is thin set corrosive, it says it right on the bag, but it's just so fine, it's like baby powder, and it gets in the air so incredibly easily. I'm just gonna go to the top ridge there. It's just for measurement purposes. 1, 2, 3, 4. You know, a scale probably would make this a lot easier. I wonder how that works. They have a quarts to pounds. Huh, maybe I'll try that on the next one. I do have a shipping scale that should work for this. It's 5, and up to the second ridge on that one. All right, so I guess I gotta put this back in the bag. Doing this by weight would have definitely been smarter, because now I gotta put this back in the bag or find a different bucket to actually mix in. I'm sure a pro just totally eyeballs how much water they're putting in the thin set, but I just don't know that well, and I do not want to screw this up. So that's why I'm going to take the extra time to measure it all out. According to my calculator, 5 3/4 divided by 3.6 is 1.6 water. So I will put 1.6 of these, as precise as I can get that, into the bucket and then put all my powder in. We'll see how that gets us once I mix it all up. There's one, and then a little over a half. There's my 1.6. I almost killed my DeWalt drill doing this last time, so learned my lesson. I'm starting with the corded drill. It's a lot less expensive. I think I'm gonna add a little bit more water to this. Seems kind of thick. I have heard before as well to mix a little bit more water in because it's not like we're setting tile here. It's basically just a thin mat, so you wanna be able to squeeze it pretty good. Still fairly thick. It's hard to tell. Without doing this every day, it's like, what's loose enough? What's not loose enough? I'm gonna do just a little bit more water in it. All right, I think we're ready for action. I'm gonna let this sit for about 10 minutes, 5-10 minutes to set up. And we'll be ready to go. Well, that's sitting. I'm gonna do one quick brush over this with a sponge just to remove any last bits of dust and put a little bit of moisture onto this felt. It's something that we got some comments on the shower waterproofing video, was about moistening up the OSB, and I do agree I should have done that. I'm gonna do it for the main floor here, just so that the dry wood doesn't completely suck all the moisture out of the thinset, you know, immediately. So I am on board with that. Didn't even think about it before though. Picking up more dog hair than anything. I'm sure those of you with dogs can relate. All right, I'm gonna start throwing water down. Hopefully this is enough to cover this whole surface. It'd be a pain if I have to mix up more midway. I think this should be plenty. I do need to key this in with the flat side before I do anything. All right. Start putting some ridges in. Oh my gosh, this is the worst part about tile. It's just the freaking back-breaking positions that you end up in to try to reach everything you need to. Then when you don't have enough on your trowel, and then you have to go back and redo it. It's like, holy smokes, how do you balance? The V-notch is kind of nice though, because it barely uses any mortar, so you can really stretch this stuff. Beautiful. I don't really know how I'm supposed to key in this little depression area, but I have a little bucket scoop, so I think this will actually work perfect for that. It's got a curved edge on it. Nothing like a good smooth trowel. No gaps in it. Oddly satisfying, as they say. I believe we're ready for the first piece. I'm hoping this goes a lot better than when I laid the shower base down for the first time. Flashback to that. Almost had a total disaster there. I put the pieces in backwards. The question is how to wrangle this big, beautiful piece in one go and get it just right. Oh, that's not how you do it. Oh my gosh. I'm sweating. It looks roughly aligned to where I had it in the mock-up. Every tile guy can relate to this stance right here. Just hovering. I think we might be there. I think we're looking good. We got our clearances all the way around. Just gonna start in the middle, work my way out. Ooh, yeah, I can see those ridges collapsing underneath the translucent sheet. That is cool. I don't even know if I'm gonna be able to capture it on camera because it's kind of faint, but you can literally see the ridge collapse as you press down on this. Check this out. You see these vertical lines? Those are the ridges. Even if you press just a little bit, see how it just turns to straight white? Boop, boop, boop. So we're gonna do that all the way across. Love that you can see it clear. Now I'm gonna use this thing to smooth it all out. This is actually a flooring tapping block for LVP floors, but I figured it looked kind of like a grout float, and it's kind of a hard plastic and it's pretty heavy, so I feel like it'll do a really good job with this. I also saw some people use a flooring roller for this as well. Just something you can apply a lot of even pressure to, kind of all at once. Yeah, I'll definitely want to weigh this down with a circle of some sort, because I can see it wanting to pop back up as I'm smoothing all the rest out. Camera died, but got the last strip on and made myself a little weight plate to keep that depression held down while that dries. I also found I like the roller better. This is the zip tape roller that we got for the sheathing panels. I like the roller better than that float. It just helps provide that point force needed to spread all those ridges out. With the float, of course, it spreads your load on a much larger area, so it's harder to really press hard and get those spread out, where the roller, it's like, gets it perfectly every time with very little pressure, because it's all concentrated at that roller. So I'll use that from now on. I don't have much mortar left at all, so I'll use up that little bit over here. My next sheet basically covers up until this plywood seam right here. So I'll mix up a new batch out of that bag and we'll keep on rolling. All right, we made it. All the matting is down and it was pretty drama-free, to be honest. I'll tell you what really helped though is before I pulled up my dry fits, I put little Sharpie lines to help me align, at least on one edge, where I needed to start the mat. That way I wasn't guessing, and all I had to do was get this nice and straight here, and that worked out really nicely for getting all the mats on easily. Now before this thin set dries, I'm gonna come through and clean out all this little squeeze out between mats, because we gotta have wires that come through here. So I don't wanna be picking out crusty thin set in order to get those wires in, and I don't wanna risk puncturing the wires on a piece of dry hard thin set. So I'm just gonna go through with a rag and a stick or something and just clean these out so that it's flatter. I, again, have a little bit of mortar left over, and I'm not gonna let that go to waste. We're gonna have to fill in between all these pucks anyway, so what I'm gonna do is mark out where my double vanity is. There's not gonna be any wires for heating under there, and I'm just gonna go ahead and start filling in that with my leftover mortar. That way I can use it up. I'll tell you what tool is completely underrated. This guy right here, the round bucket scoop that is the exact same radius as the bucket. Being able to clean off the sides of a bucket easily is so nice. Being able to keep all that thin set from drying on the sides. And that's easier said than done to do with a rectangular trowel. You really have to be kind of skilled with this thing to make that happen. Whereas this, any old dummy can just scrape it right down the side of the bucket. It's so easy. I feel like most of these purpose-built trowels that you'll find at somewhere like Harbor Freight are kind of a gimmick, like corner drywall trowels is something that comes to mind there. But this thing, holy crap, I love this thing. Totally worth whatever this was at Harbor. I don't even know if this was Harbor Freight or not. Wallboard, no, it's actually not Harbor Freight. But this thing is making my life easier, so grab one of these if you're doing any sort of tiling or flooring that requires thin set. Just have a few scoops, nothing crazy left over, but figured might as well not let it go to waste. I mean, look at that. Not a tablespoon of thin set left behind with that trowel. It's the little things in life that keep me happy. Simple but effective tools. Yeah, these little pucks eat that mortar right up. That didn't go very far at all. So I let all the mat cure overnight, came back today, checked, everything looks really nice, very solidly adhered even at the corners. I think using that floor roller to collapse the ridges really helped, especially at the corner areas where it's more susceptible to not getting full coverage, but everything turned out really nicely. My little weight with the shower worked out well. It's got that nice depression, it's very even. And when I put the drain on there, it should plane out completely to tile everything, and everything should end up flush. We'll see once we put the tile on, but now we are going to go ahead and do the wire. So there's really three main components for the guts of this system. The thermostat that's going on the wall. fancy little touchscreen thermostat, and then 2 wires, one for the shower area, one for the main area. I got an 84-foot long wire and a 166-foot long wire for the smaller and bigger areas respectively. How did I figure out those lengths? Mainly using the handy dandy chart provided on the box. The shower's 4 foot by 6 foot, 24 square foot, 26 was the closest here. This is the 3 peg spacing, which is the typical spacing. So if I come over, boom, that lands me at an 84-foot long cable. Same thing with the main bathroom. It was like 50 feet. I think I saw this 52 right here, came over, and then there's 166 cable length. So that was pretty easy. I did make sure to subtract the vanity and the toilet area out of the main bathroom area because obviously I'm not gonna be running wire under that. And LATICRETE also had a little tool which I played around with a little bit. I can't remember if I even saved the design, but they let you draw out your bathroom, place the toilet and the vanity and whatever else in there, and it will automatically tell you what length wire you need. But I think the table's gonna work just fine in this instance. It's a pretty small and pretty simple bathroom. Step 1 before we start unrolling anything is to measure the resistance on this wire. There's a very specific resistance that these are supposed to be, and if they're not within the specs, then you know that something's wrong. So you gotta measure resistance before putting it in, after you've laid the wire down in the mat, but before you've tiled, and then after you've tiled, to make sure that all those numbers are the same and the wire hasn't gotten kinked or pinched or anything. Cool, so each wire comes with a little floor sensor too. That's gonna come in handy in just a little bit. And here's my 2 leads for the 84-foot wire. They even left a little handwritten test note on this, so that's promising. So I opted for 120 volt, that's what that tag is. I just didn't want to use 2 spaces up in the breaker for 240 volt. Here's my 2 leads, and then it's got a braided ground right here. That guy will get grounded to the box. The manual tells me I should have a nominal resistance of 44.3 ohms, but there's a plus or minus, I think 5% band. Anywhere between 42.1 and 48.7, I'm good. This is just a standard multimeter I'm using to do this. Make sure you don't pinch the lead together with your fingers, because then that will include the resistance of your body. So you definitely don't want to do that. Touch just the wires to the leads. Oh my gosh, come on. Easier said than done though sometimes. Okay, there we go. Let's see what we settle out at. 45.1, 45.2, looking pretty steady. I'm gonna reverse polarity and see what happens. If this changes my reading at all. 45.7 going the other way, 45.2 going the other way. I'm gonna call it at 45.4 if I balance it out.
For some odd reason, I could not get a reading to stabilize on this second wire, so I broke out the cheap mega meter that I got for the first heated floor I did, which also has a multimeter built in, and it read the expected resistance. Then I tried to actually use the high voltage function that it's built for to test wire insulation, and that didn't work at all. So I guess that's what happens when you buy cheap Amazon tools. The sensor wires did check out around 10 ohms though, like they're supposed to be.
Well, despite the mega meter not really working, I'm gonna call these wires good enough to install, so let's start getting them on the floor. So we gotta get all the cables up through this conduit that I put in a while back. So I'm gonna start by inserting our rusty old fish tape, which I have no idea how this thing got rusty because I don't think I left this out in the weather, but this thing is nasty. We may be there. Hello in there. And there she is. I'm gonna tape all these wires together and feed them up through. So it's our 2 heat wires, 2 sensor wires. We need to get all these up into the box. This is just a menagerie of wires. Nothing a little electrical tape can't tame though. All right, let's let it rip. Hard part's keeping these little curlicues straightened out. I think ideally you want to use a separate conduit for your sensor wires from your power because power influences sensor wires with electromagnetic field. But I did not think about that when I was initially laying this out, so I don't have that. I don't think I had it for the Schluer system I did a while back either, and that's been working for about 5 years now, so I don't think it's that big of a deal. Gotta be close to it. This is literally pushing rust dust into my box. Oh, I feel the tape. We're home free. Ta-da! JK, only 1 sensor wire came up with the 2 blues, so must have lost 1 along the way. Please hold for that. There's the second one, 1 fish later. And I went ahead and labeled it with a black flag. That way I know which sensor is main, which one's backup. All right, now we're off to the races on actually putting the wire in the cups. I'm gonna do the shower one first, which is the shorter 84-foot cable. So I came out and went right along the front of the door here. The first thing to pay attention to here is the hot cold splice. So this part of the wire that goes up into the wall is just basically standard 14 gauge electrical wire stranded. It doesn't actually have the resistive element that puts heat off. So this is gonna be an unheated wire, but at some point that unheated wire has to transition to a highly resistive heated wire, and that's where the splice is. So they have another copy of the label down here, and on the back is a very clear indication that 12 inches from here is the splice. It's gotta be no closer than 12 inches to the wall, definitely not within the wall, and it has to be encased in the tile floor. 12 inches down the road, here we are. It's even got a little heating cable arrow, so you know this is the hot side. This says splice, and then it says cold side this way. So I am only like 2.5 cups from the wall here. I'm not exactly sure why you can't have it next to the wall exactly. I mean, that's really the wall that it came out of, but I really want it to be in this run here because that is my direct path to the shower. So it's gonna have enough tile over it here. I'm not really worried about it. I might call them tomorrow just to make sure before we go ahead and tile this, but that's what I'm gonna do. All right, let's see if my curb method is gonna work out the way I was planning it to. This has got a minimum bend radius to it, so we can't go too sharp. And that was the idea behind doing this little chicane up through here, which I think that's gonna work out just fine. The hardest part I knew was gonna be getting it over top of the curb. This wasn't gonna be too bad. Probably should have done another chicane across the curb diagonally, but I guess I wasn't thinking that far ahead. And on this side, we're coming right down into this puck right here. Will that work? I think that'll work just fine. That's not too bad at all. I think once you get that encased in thinset, that's going to be perfect. Now I should be able just to snake this around in the shower and it's done. I'm gonna keep it at 3-peg spacing to start. I might tighten it up a little bit around the drain where we're gonna want the most drying potential because that's where the water's gonna mostly be sitting. The nice thing though about this is it just barely snaps in here just with your fingers, or you can use a float if your fingers get tired. So if it doesn't work out exactly the way you want it, you can just pull it right up and redo it again in like 5 minutes. So I'm just gonna go for the 3-3 to start, see where that lands me, and hopefully we get it on the first shot. If not, I'll pull it back up. And there is the final result. That wasn't too bad. I did a little bit of waffling there in the middle around the drain, but my biggest question mark was how close can I actually get to the drain? I could have gone 1 cup closer here and not really much on the rest of it, but I wanted to get as close as possible because this is the main area I'm trying to dry out, but not so close that it compromises anything about the drain itself. I mean, this is plastic that will be going a little bit over top of the wire on each side. Everything's gonna be embedded in thinset, so that's what really dissipates all the heat, but I just didn't wanna get too close, but also didn't wanna go too far away where it doesn't dry this middle area here. The length worked out pretty well though. I started over here doing 3-3. I went to a 2 spacing just before the drain. This little white tape here marks the halfway mark, so that was almost perfectly at my drain. But of course, that's halfway from over there where that camera is. So here's another 8 foot that I had to account for on the left side, which means on this side, I just did 3-2 spacing, which is the tightest you can go. So 3 pucks, then 2, 3, then 2. And that landed my end right there at the corner. Speaking of which, where the wire wraps around here, it's thicker, so it will not go into the pucks like the rest of it will. I'm gonna have to cut out a little recess in these pucks to try to push that down when I go ahead and tile over this. That wasn't so bad. Time to rinse and repeat on the main floor. I've already got the keep out zone marked out where our vanity is gonna be. This is a heat vent in case you were wondering. So this vanity is not gonna be closed underneath it. We'll have some open space. There'll be an elbow that comes off here to direct the heat out from underneath the vanity. So it's not super critical that we don't put wires under the vanity because it's not gonna really trap any heat. There's still gonna be airspace, but might as well not heat somewhere we're not gonna put our feet at. Same thing with around the toilet. I don't think I'm gonna go back to the wall there. You're supposed to stay a decent radius out from the toilet because of the wax ring, but we are not going to be using a wax ring on this toilet. But just as good practice, we'll keep a little bit away from that. And otherwise, it's just a 2-inch clearance from walls. Well, I'm halfway through and I'm realizing I definitely could have gone down one size on the wire. I found the halfway marker to this and I'm probably closer to 3/4 of the way done. And I'm using a 3-2 spacing the whole way because I figured I was gonna be a little bit tight. So I think I'm gonna have to use up a little bit more room underneath the vanity. Of course, I used up my thinset underneath the vanity last night and I can't use most of that area. Plus there's that heat vent right there, so I can't use that either. But I guess I'll have to go around the toilet a little bit more, try to burn up some more wire. If I were to continue on now, even at 3-2 spacing, I would have like 30 extra feet. So gotta figure out what I'm gonna do here. Running the shower wire here was something I didn't really factor into my equations either. That effectively is a 1/4 of a foot this way that I can't start my next one until, and it's a full 8-foot long run. So that's probably 2 to 4 square foot burnt up just with that little guy. So worst case Ontario, I think you can do them at a 2-2 spacing if you really need to. The instructions are very clear that say do not space it closer than 2 pegs. They don't say anything explicitly about if you do like a repeated 2-2 spacing, if that's gonna cause an issue. I guess I don't really have a choice if I get to that point because you can't cut or shorten this at all. So we will figure it out.
See in the forest, for the trees I'm keeping watch, all that is storming, waking up and turning on, keeping the light on, righting all the wrongs, keeping our sights on everything.
Well, even with that little bit of extra there, we still have 2 extra runs. I have these just sort of temporarily laid out so I could see where they're at, and I don't have enough room for them even at 3-2 spacing on the whole floor. So I kind of worked it out in my head. If I take these last 4 loops out, shift them over and do 2-2 on these 4, that should give me enough to snake those last 3 runs in. The only other place I could remove length is take some length off of this cold lead. I could potentially pull that through the box and cut that down. That yellow splice only needs to be 1 foot into the floor. So that would buy me 4 more foot, but that means I'm gonna have to take up the entire floor and I don't really wanna do that again. Well, I shifted everything over to 2-2 spacing and lo and behold, I still have about 18 inches left to get rid of. So I could take this whole floor up and take that little bit off the cold lead and I could do it. But the more I've thought about this, I don't think I want to proceed with this long wire. There's only so far I'm willing to deviate from the book. And at this 2-2 spacing, this is fully half the floor here. It is just too tight for my comfort, especially under something that's so permanent like tile. And my real worry is that it's going to heat up just way too fast. And the shower, which is a 3-3 and 3-2, is never gonna fully get up to temperature by the time that this kicks off because my sensor wire is gonna be in the main floor. And when I look back on it, I probably should have done a separate thermostat for the shower versus the main floor so that I could run just the shower by itself. But 20/20 hindsight, they're both gonna be run at the same time, controlled from the same thermostat. And the sensor wire is gonna have to go between one of these runs of 2 wire spacing. And I think it's gonna short cycle if I keep this the way it is. So thankfully I'm able to exchange this with the next size down, which is 133 foot instead of 166. I think that'll go a lot better. I think we're still gonna have to do 3-2 here on the bathroom floor, but it should work out much better. Just like the old saying goes, 4th time is the charm. Well, we're back to a clean slate. Hopefully 4th time will be the charm on this floor. In the meantime, I'm gonna go ahead and tile the shower floor just so we can keep moving here. But I wanna keep this video all centered around radiant heat, so I'm gonna do the tiling on a separate video. So let's get this thing done. Well, George would like to announce to everyone that by the magic of UPS and a little bit of waiting time, we have the right length cable, 133 foot. So the shower floor is done. We got to finish this main floor up now. Before I get this totally rolled out and pressed in, I think I'm just going to sort of roughly roll it out and tack it at the ends, and then I can make sure that the length's going to be right before I press every single suction cup in. What do you think of that? Is that going to give us a warm floor? Is that going to keep your paws warm? Is that going to keep your little paws warm? I think so. I'm just going to roughly tack this in place. Like I said, I'm pretty sure I'll need to do a 3-2 pattern on this. I have a dog laying down in my wire path.
Big boy, is this a comfy little spot for you? We've got a dog hanging out in the bathroom. Just a dog hanging out in the bathroom. Sing it, George. I'm a dog hanging out in the bathroom. Are you gonna help or just stand there?
Classic Georgie right here. Standing extremely awkwardly, basically all hours of the day.
Got a dog hanging out in the bathroom. I love making up songs. Got a dog hanging out in the bathroom. He's ready for heated floors. All right, you ready?
You just want a belly rub.
I was gonna have you push one of the little wires in. And all he wants is a dang belly rub. Push. Nope, not ready yet.
This was a quick and dirty layout to make sure the length was in the ballpark before pressing it into every groove again and being disappointed yet again.
We have success. This is a 3-2 layout. The only thing left at the end of my 3-2 is this is about 5 foot. So I can easily compensate for that by pulling a couple more foot out of the beginning there into the box, and then just do a couple runs maybe to the right of the vanity or even to the right of the toilet there where I'm gonna be stepping into the shower.
So that's a relief. I'm glad that is taken care of. We have the right length now. I'm glad we did the 133 footer because the next size down I think was 98, and another 30 foot off of this would have made it a lot more sparse. It would have been on the verge of 3-3, maybe some 4-4, 3 or 4 or whatever. So I think this is gonna be much closer to what the shower is. Half the shower is 3-2, the other half's 3-3. The 2 sensor wires that we're gonna have in here will both be in this main floor, however, so I wanted to keep this heating up just about as quick as the shower so that the temperatures are pretty even between the two. This is the final go at pressing all this wire in, except when there's still like 4 inches at the end and I needed to shift everything down like 3 pucks, so I guess 6 time is actually the charm.
Holy guacamole, we've finally done it. After the 5th try, we have a wire that fits in the floor.
Oh my gosh, we are finally ready to put some tile on this thing.
Before I start dry cutting, I do need to get this termination point down into the cups. I didn't show it on the shower, so I will here. We gotta carve these cups out a little bit. Couple minutes and a utility knife, boom. It was a lot easier to do this one than the shower because we weren't worried about breaking through a waterproof membrane right beneath this mat.
Can't forget to put our sensor wires in so the thermostat actually knows how hot the floor is. There are 2 of them for just redundancy, a few feet long each, and we're supposed to put them in between the runs of the 2 peg spacing just so that it's at sort of the hottest point locally in the floor. That'll shut off the circuit quicker than if it was in the middle of a 3 peg spacing and keeps the floor from overheating. I labeled this one with black tape at both ends because this is the one more in the middle of the floor that I want to use, and the tape lets me know at the box which one is which. Here's how I situated everything coming out of the wall, just so everything has its own little channel to go in. No 2 wires in one channel, nothing crossing over each other. Quick resistance test before tiling. The tag on this guy says 27.4 ohms at 20 degrees Celsius. I got smart and used the alligator clips for my mega meter on my normal multimeter. Luckily the plugs work the same. We are right at 28.3, 28.4 ohms. 28, oh, now it's going up as I'm jiggling it around, but I think that is within tolerance. Now I'm gonna start dry laying out tile. I'm doing all the tile in a totally separate video because that's its own can of worms. So we'll just do some film magic on this one. I wish every project went that easily. And look, we even got a back wall tile to our shower. So we're ready to get this thing fired up. This is our thermostat box, and this is what's gonna be mounted there. Let's see what we got going on here. These are our 2 sensor wires. The blues are our 2 floor wires. This black, white, and ground is our dedicated 12 gauge, 20 amp Romex circuit. And this ground is coming from the metal box because the box has gotta be grounded too. And it turns out this thermostat does not have a ground connection, which means these 2 are just gonna get tied together and put back in the box. This is a 2 gang box with just a single gang muttering too, so that really helps with our space inside. You can get to either side of it. Oh, you know what? These floor wires have ground braids, so I guess I should add those to that as well. First order of business, shorten this super long one, the same length as the other. Don't want to lose my label though. This has got all the information for the cable, so I'll tape that back on. All right, we're getting our life together here. And unfortunately though, I cannot find my Wago connectors because that would be perfect for this. I absolutely hate trying to twist together stranded and solid wire. It just does not work very well. But unfortunately, I'm gonna have to try to do it on this go around because I cannot find my lever locks. Getting them all the same length to start definitely helps, but I still don't love this. Next time I'm in this box, I'll definitely replace these with Wagos, but they will work. Tug test. All right, they're not pulling out, so we'll take that. Here's what we got coming out of the thermostat. Pretty simple, line and load. So our black hot wire is gonna connect to this. Neutral is gonna connect to this red guy here. That's our power taken care of. And then for the load, I don't think there's a polarity for these. It's just a resistive circuit. So the red and black don't really matter. They're gonna be wired up to the white and clear coming out of our floor wires. This is rated for switching up to 15 amps on and off. Anything more than that, and you'll need a separate relay to basically connect that high voltage circuit. We do have 2 floor wires, so I'm gonna connect them here. The max amperage of the 2 wires that we have adds up to around 8 amps, so we're still well within the 15 amp range. Anything more than that, and this would just have to switch a relay, which is a low voltage switch that connects a higher voltage circuit. I'm not even really sure how you would do that in a residential box. Maybe you need a separate box, not sure, but luckily we don't have to cross that bridge. And then finally, there's these 3 little green terminals on the bottom, P1, P2, and PC. Those are for our sensor wires. You can choose whether the sensors are either a limit switch, so that they're gonna limit that max temperature of the floor, or if they're used for the control circuits. So the floor sensor is what's gonna trigger the on and off rather than the air sensor built into this thermostat. Because there's 3 terminals, you can actually wire both up to this at the same time, and you can switch into controls whether you want to utilize both sensors for limit and control, or just for limit using the air for control, or vice versa. So there's a bunch of different settings. I'll play around with that once we get it fired up. This looks freaking crazy with these labels and these wire nuts. Hopefully it's okay. So just to double check here, we've got our black line in to black line in. Neutral goes to the red. All of our 4 grounds together under this guy. Both of our floor wire whites to this red. Both of our floor wire clears to this black. The sensor wires, whites are sharing the PC terminal, blacks are in P1 and P2. They almost all have to go in at the same exact time. Now there's only one thing left to do. It's alive! Let's go! English. Okay, so they can do a few different types. Hydronic, relays if you have that extra relay for more wire than the thermostat can turn on, and baseboard heat. We are electric floor. We're on tile stone. Control, so it's the floor is what we want to be the control. We have our sensor. This is for a separate thermostat, and this is for the built-in thermostat. Not sure why it's called a regulator. Might be a European thing. Limit, we have no other option. It is the floor. And I think this is actually built into the thermostat for the floor type anyway, but we'll set it at 90. And it looks like I need an app. Guess I'm adding another app to my home folder that already has like 8,000 home control apps on it. If anyone watching knows a lot about home automation or control, is there a single system that like really encompasses everything? I'm talking HVAC and smart lighting and smart blinds and surround sound and everything like that. Like, is there one thing that does it all? I haven't found one yet, but that's not really my forte. I'd be very curious to see if there is a truly all-inclusive solution. Okay, the little arrow means it's on, so I think if I bump this down to like 60, that should go off. Yep, heard the click. There's my 60 set point. This is telling me that the floor temperature is currently 71. Just wanted to check that the sensors are set up right. Yep, control probe P1, limit probe P2. Floor thermostat with floor limit, perfect. I don't want the display on at all during the night or on standby, so we can turn that off, thankfully. And I think we're good. It's a nice, pretty background too. If I turn this up, say 76, we are heating now.
Check this out. I borrowed this guy right here. This is a FLIR infrared thermal gun. I borrowed it from a friend just for this video because I thought it would be really cool to see the floor when it's starting to heat up. Check this out. What? Look at that. You can literally see right through it. Like, look around the shower drain. It's like extremely vivid. I was not expecting it to be that vivid at all. You can see the toilet flange there. There's the AC vent, so that's really cold. But then right where the vanity is, you're not seeing anything. You can literally see where the splice in the floor is. That is so interesting. The other one should start somewhere around over here. Yep, there's the start of the one and here's the end of the other. That's incredible. Yeah, I can definitely feel where the wires are. It's probably gonna take some time for this to all equalize out, but that is really interesting. So we'll see what this does for keeping the shower dry, keeping it a little bit cozier here in the winter. This bathroom is in the middle of the house, so it doesn't really get too cold in here anyway, but we figured, you know, you're only laying this tile floor once, you might as well put the heated floor in while you have the chance. So I'm gonna call this project a success. This is really cool. We'll have to play around with the scheduling and stuff, but we have a heated floor in this bathroom and it's working. Hopefully this video helped you if you're installing a radiant heat floor anytime soon. As always, thanks for watching. We'll see you on the next one.